Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Yes and Brand Show every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific because I'm in the heart and epicenter of Silicon Valley. So, everything revolves around San Jose.
The whole world does.
The whole world. We're just like the center of the universe. We think we are. We're really not. I know that will come as a shock to some people that live in Silicon Valley. Don't tell it to Facebook or Google. But we can't be using a Facebook product and saying that. But I'm really super excited to have our guest. And before I introduce him, let me introduce him first, and then I'm going to tell you a little story because it's a good story and it deserves to be told. So first, welcome to the show, Ross Brand. Ross Brand, he is my favorite brand of all because he is a live stream rock star. No, thank you, because you are a live stream rock star. In my mind, you are. So you don't need an intro, but you get one because everybody who generously gives their time to come on the Yes and Brand Show to give great information deserves a great intro. So you get one too. Ross helps people and businesses grow their brands with live streaming. And he's one of the top live streaming influencers, no question. You think of who's out there kicking butt in the live stream world, it's Ross Brand, right? He's the number one influencer. And he is the founder of livestreamuniverse.com. So let's go ahead and we'll show that, livestreamuniverse.com. Be sure to go there, check it out. Again, I'm Kathy Klotz-Guest, founder of Keeping It Human. Most people know me, but if you're new to the show, welcome. You can go to keepingithuman.com and check me out as well. And we'll give the Twitter handle again at the end. I'll type that in there. But if you want to check out Ross, his Twitter handle is @iRossBrand. Make sure you get the I in there. There's a lot of Ross Brands, but there's only one Ross Brand. So @iRossBrand. And I am at Kathy Klotz-Guest. So let me before we turn it over to Ross, I got to give this little story. So we'll show this. So the very first time I had Ross on the show, like everything that could go wrong did with audio, like everything. So so I had Ross on the show to talk about being spontaneous and improvising, which you have to do in live stream when things go wrong. And it was just very comical because that was the topic of the show. And sure enough, in true form, to live illustrate my point, everything that could go wrong did. So it turns out, unbeknownst to me, I use a product called Soundflower, which is commonly used for people who do recording podcasts in Skype. If you want to use a third-party tool to record audio in Skype, a lot of people use Soundflower. It's a very popular audio sweetening capture program. Well, I didn't know that it had a conflict, and I would never have diagnosed it, but the audio kept cutting in and out, and Ross had to step up and run the show. He literally... We had all these comments coming in and they were supportive. They were hilarious. They were like, go Ross. And it was like, I had to joke that it was the Yes and Ross Brand show because Ross had to literally drive. He had to take the steering wheel and it was beautiful because he did such a fabulous, fabulous job. And I was so grateful. So with that, welcome back. We're glad to have you.
Thanks. I had fun anyway. It was a blast. I think you give me more credit than I deserve. We were both working our way through it and improvising along the way. But it's great to be on with you. And I love your show and I'm so glad to come back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, we're glad to have you. This is the very first show that I'm running through Keeping It Human, everybody. And I'll say a shout out to those. If you watch this later in recorded video, that's cool. Just make sure that if you want to see the broadcast live, you want to be notified, go and like the Keeping It Human page on Facebook, and that way you can get notified. Click that little notification button and make sure that you get all that. And again, be sure to check out livestreamuniverse.com. You'll want to check out all the good stuff that Ross has. So before we get into talking about how to unleash your inner rock star, because I know Ross has tons of stuff on that, let's talk about South by. You have a very exciting thing that you are promoting for South by. Tell everybody about it.
So, Jenny Mustafa Julak, you know her probably as Coach Jenny if you're watching this. Karen Graves, Monique Johnson, and myself are proposing a panel for South by Southwest on Facebook Live. It'll be about building your tribe and actually making money on Facebook Live. We think it's going to be a really good presentation, and we would love your votes. South by Southwest Panel Picker is the name of the contest, I guess you'd call it. The voting starts on Monday, and it runs for about 3 weeks. And we're going to be doing, we don't just want to ask for your vote and nothing in return. So we're going to be doing 5 days a week of free content for 3 weeks. Each of us, once a week, will do a solo show where we give out some information and we hope will be helpful related to the topic. And then Friday, all four of us are going to get together and give you kind of a sample of what it's like when we work together. So, we're definitely putting it out there, what we know, what we can show, and to try and provide value during this time, so that, you get something back. We're not just asking you vote and going to go away, or if you can't make it to South by Southwest, you still get the benefit of what we hope is some good knowledge that we'll be sharing.
Yeah, no question. It sounds like a great panel. And I also have a couple things that I threw my hat in the ring again. I had a great time this past year. I want to say last year, but that just happened in March. It was this year.
That's right. We're working on 2018 already.
Exactly. We're working on 2018. My brain is always like a year ahead because of the speaker guidelines when you have to get stuff submitted. But so I spoke in March and I had a great time. And I submitted for a couple of things. The first thing is with my friend Mike Ganino. Mike Ganino and I are both improvisers. We're both communicators, and we help companies be better. But we put in for a workshop to uncover unconscious bias and use improv as a non-judgmental, fun tool for in groups. How do you know if you have unconscious bias? One of the things that we hear a lot.
You're alive.
You're alive. Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Ding, ding, ding. Every person on the planet wins.
You get unconscious bias, and you get unconscious bias.
7 billion winners.
7 billion winners. No, that's hysterical because it's true. Everybody has unconscious bias, but here's the thing: you hear all about the bad boys in Silicon Valley. You hear about Uber. You hear about the 500 startups with Dave McClure. You hear about all these kind of horror stories, and hear about this runaway sexism. But the issue is that with unconscious bias, if you were to ask somebody, hey, do you have sexism and racism at your company? People say no, because they honestly don't see it or don't believe that it's happening. And so unconscious bias is tricky because if you're a human being, trust me, you are like a coffee maker because you all have a filter. We all have filters. We're human. And as Ross said, we all do. And part of what we want to do in this workshop is raise awareness in a non-judgmental way. Because it can be really shocking to people to realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that the way we were hiring, our hiring practices were filtering out women in tech, or, and people need a safe space to have that discovery and then figure out how they're going to fix it. So that's the workshop Mike and I are going to do. It's going to be totally fun because you got two improvisers doing it.
Right.
The second thing is I put my hat in the ring to speak about empathy. I've been doing a lot of research on empathy for my next book. And empathy and improv go hand in hand. It's how we build scenes on a stage. And in a lot of the work that I've done with companies on crafting messaging and creativity, you cannot have great team dynamics. You just can't have collaboration without empathy. And so I've researched this, talked to a lot of companies, and I've got a lot of great information to share. So that talk is called The Empathy Revolution: 5 Keys to Empathy in Your Company. So that panel picker, as Ross said, starts on Monday the 7th. So you'll want to go to southbysouthwest.com, search panel picker, go to Ross's stuff, vote yes, vote yes. Go to my stuff, vote yes.
Can we vote for you twice? Like one for each of your panels? Like one for your panel, one for your solo?
You can. And here's the thing that I didn't realize till after I submitted is that you can vote as for as many things and that one person submits. However, I only get one shot to speak to make it equitable for everybody. So, for example, if both of those were to get selected, and I think that's probably a remote chance, but if they were, I would have to make a choice of which one I wanted to choose.
So there's solo speakers in the panel picker as well. I didn't realize that. I thought it was just panels. So wow, it's going to be a lot of people all together, huh?
Oh no, panel picker is just what they call it, but panel picker refers to workshops too.
Right.
As well as panels. So panel picker is just their name, but that's a great question. It's a great point. So you'll go in there and you'll vote, and the voting goes for 3 weeks, as Ross says, and then it's about 30% of the total points of what gets selected is community voting. Then there's other voting, which happens by the panel. The panel looks at the topics and the diversity of topics, and that also is a factor as well. So there's a couple different things that factor in. So check that out on Monday, starting August 7th. And
awesome.
We appreciate it. Well,
I hope we get to hang out there. That would be so much fun. Not only meet in person, but get to spend some time at South by Southwest. It would be my first time going, so I'm really, really hoping that this.
No, it's a blast. It's a blast. Where else can a mother who runs a business have a story where she hung out with some executives from Capital One? While a kind of like slam dancing broke out at a concert at 1 a.m, and which was scary and also incredibly exhilarating. Like, these are the kinds of stories that you bring back from South by, and you're having conversations with people while all this stuff is going on. So it's a wonderful, great, magical place. It's like Disneyland for creative people. Mm-hmm. For adults. Jay, welcome. Thanks for sharing that out, Jay. Hey, Jay. Yeah, no, that's right.
Get to meet Jay if we go out there.
Yeah, I didn't realize Jay was in Austin until after South by was over. I would have reached out, Jay, and said hello. Because I was at Esther's Follies. I did some stand-up while I was out there. One of my favorite comedy clubs is out there. So yeah, we'll have to, I think it's a party, and I hope Russ and I get to go party with you, Jay. So that'll be awesome.
You mean I could get to see you do stand up if I'm out there?
I hope so.
That would be awesome. Oh my God.
Yeah. Typically what I try to do is whatever city I'm in, if I can't pre-plan something, I try to at least catch an open mic or two. And that's just something really fun for me. That's what I try to do. So yes, it is Panel Picker Jay. That is it. And thank you. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about unleashing your live stream rockstar. And I have a rockstar here with me, and that is Ross. So Ross, when I say rockstar, I know everybody's a rockstar. You're a rockstar of this. You're a rockstar of this. Everybody's a rockstar. Everybody's award winning.
Every speech is a keynote.
Every speech is a keynote. It's just, it's the same sort of rag to riches story that goes around the internet. Every influencer has to have. But in all seriousness,
I started out with zero.
I had it with nothing, and then I built an empire.
Every model was awkward as a child.
Exactly. Every model was an ugly duckling, and then they became a gorgeous swan.
It just happened.
It just happened one day. When I say rockstar, because you've been doing this for a long time, and you are a key influencer in this area. What does that mean to you? I mean, I know we sort of dumb down these words and they become diluted. But when I say live stream rockstar, what do you think of? What is it for you?
I think of like the Rolling Stones go on concert and decide to live stream one of their shows, and that would be a live stream rock star. I don't think of myself as a rock star, obviously. I just think of somebody who likes to do this and likes to talk with people. Mm-hmm. And because I have a background in broadcasting and I've worked in social media, I kind of can combine the different elements of this and be able to help people and put together live streaming shows, whether they're trying to do a show for the sake of doing a show or they're trying to do a show in order to build their personal brand or their business. But I think, Rockstar is, like I say, I mean, that's when the Rolling Stones do the live stream show or something like that. That's a rock star.
Yeah. It's true. So I guess we're all award winning. We're not all rock stars, but we're all award winning.
Yes.
It's true. It's true. Well, it's funny because I think that there's so much happening in live stream, and I think there are certain qualities that propel people, I think, to the top and give them kind of a broad appeal. And we were talking a little bit about this the other day, you and I. What are some of the things that you think, or some of those qualities that propel people, help them break out of that live stream pack just a little bit?
Well, I think when you look at, right, like who's going to go from doing shows, which there's a lot of people doing, not as many as there used to be, I don't think, because a lot of people decided that, okay, after a month or a year or whatever, it wasn't going, they weren't like almost Oprah. And so, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. But so a lot of people have kind of gone back to the, just live stream as they walk down the street with their cell phone, which can be wonderful and is a certainly legitimate form of communication. And but when we talk about shows and things that are at least a little bit polished and structured and usually have a set time and guests or call-ins or some type of format and whatever, I think what I look at is, first of all, people just have to have that something, right? That you like listening to them, you like seeing them, you like their laugh, you like how they present material. 4 people can get up and say the same joke, right? From comedy, and only one will make you laugh, even though it's the same joke, right? So there's something to that in live streaming. You can teach somebody to hit all the buttons and do stuff, but not everything's good. Not everybody was made to do this, just like not everybody's a writer, not everybody's a singer. But certainly, unlike, say, singing, where there's Aretha Franklin and there's, somebody screeching in their shower or whatever, most people are within a spectrum of, like, if they polished up and they kept at it, they can use this effectively because most people were pretty good at talking on the phone. So this is talking in the phone with a webcam staring at you. If you think of it that way, just 2 of us are having a conversation as friends and we're communicating. And there's the social aspect being cognizant of the chat, paying attention to the chat is a better way to say. So there's that aspect. But I think in terms of like who's going to take this and break out, right, and become have a bigger audience, go to TV or go to a produced live stream, branded content at a higher level, whatever. I think it's somebody who has not only all the skills to do it up to a certain competency, right? But they have a topic that has either a very strong niche appeal where that people in that niche spend money, or they have something universal that I think of Hillary Silver, for example, who's a relationship coach and therapist and deals with couples issues and dating and all those kind of things, right? And she's live streaming her show like everybody else, and she's a good show. But she has a topic. In addition to the skills that she has and the expertise in her area and the fact that she's good on camera and on podcasting, her ability to talk about relationships, which is a universal issue and appeals to people, everybody, right? As many people as think unconscious bias have some type of relationship, right? So you're dealing with everybody. So put that all together, that was her ticket to being a guest on the Steve Harvey Show, a guest expert, and actually helping a couple with relationships. Leslie Nance is somebody who, in helping people, she uses live streaming to teach how you can use your kitchen to, avoid cancer. She says, make your body inhospitable to cancer. She not only has the personal story of overcoming cancer, but she's teaching something that we all want, which is to stay healthy and particularly to avoid that horrible disease. So she also has a niche for herself in addition to all the skills and talent that she brings to her presentation and her shows and how hard she works, because there's all this hard work too. All these people that, you think, oh, they go to the next level just because they have natural talent. No, these people are working really hard, but they're doing it with a topic or in a niche that just can connect. We know food shows work. Food Network has shows. We know people who do food shows often get their own larger talk show, whether they're a chef traveling around the world or they're hosting a daytime talk show or whatever. So I see her as somebody doing what she's doing in the top of her game that could go and either have a TV show, or if live streaming becomes the new TV, she becomes a big live streaming personality. And she's plenty accomplished. I mean, she won, she was a finalist for Shorty Awards for Periscoper of the Year. So I see people like that. I'm sure there's other people that I've probably mentioned to you along the way who aren't popping into my head at the moment, but there are people who just have something that the larger world can't wait to hear about.
Yeah, it's interesting. All those things I think are important. I think one of the things that when I talk to people about, and you probably do too, I think for me, it's sort of like we're joking about everybody gets a ribbon, a participation ribbon. But here's the thing that's important is that without worrying about whether or not you're a rock star, I've always believed that the mindset is, how am I showing up and giving value to my audience? And am I talking about a topic that they care about? To your point about relationships is a universal. We all want better relationships. Health is a universal because we all want to be healthy. So you've got to find where I think part of being a rock star is not really self-focused. It's what's my skill set? Where can I make a difference with what I know that could help people? And is it showing up to give the best of what I have? And if I can help people use yes and use some of the tenets of improv and some of the lessons that I've learned in areas of their life to make them better, then that's doubling down on where I am focused and where I'm at my best for the benefit of the audience. So when we say rock star, it's a little tongue in cheek, but I do believe that getting to that rock star means focusing on what you do best. So when you do show up live, you are purposeful about your intent, and I think there's a lot of people that just go live. Look what I'm having for breakfast. Look what and we kind of laugh about it because it's true. But I think part of being, a rock star for me is I look at the people that are intentional and purposeful, and there's a message, and that I think is part of the first thing of if you're going to be a rock star. Who are you? Why are you doing it? Who are you doing it for?
Well, somebody who's a mutual friend of ours, Roberto Blake, to me is a rock star. Now, I don't know that Roberto Blake is ever going to break out and be talking about tech and marketing and video marketing on Steve Harvey or, getting his own syndicated show. He's just going to continue making money and being the genius in the room. And if that all drives business to him, which I know it does, then, not everybody has to take it to like, okay, I've got to go play, Madison Square Garden or something like that, right? If you're making a great living playing 2,000 seat arenas and they're always sold out, and that's where your subject matter strength and your personality fits. I mean, there's no room of any size I've ever seen Roberto in where he doesn't own, like he can't own the room, right? With his knowledge, his passion, his personality, and everything else. And so, I think it's what your business is too, because some people are here just to entertain. Some people are here they're here about their business, but really at the end of the day, I think it's the broadcasting thing that's going to take them further than even their business. But if, you're here and you get a client a month or whatever, and each of those clients pay you $50,000 or something, you're making a tremendous living. You'd be crazy to go, what topic can I change my mind to so that I can maybe get on a big show or something? You're probably going to talk to the same 30 or 40 people that you talk to once a week and be plenty happy when one of them becomes a client, and that has a huge impact on your bottom line. So again, if you're a store owner, you're a restaurant owner, whatever, then it comes to material that helps you connect with people who might one day come into your store or buy from you online or eat your food or whatever. And it doesn't necessarily have to be talking about that product from dawn till dusk, but it's talking about something and letting people know that you do have a business or a product or a service behind it, and you build the relationships. Mm-hmm. And then when they need that product or service you have to offer, you're the one on the top of their mind because they've seen you consistently be there and you've provided value, whether it's business knowledge or it's just entertainment and connection and friendship and things like that. And then don't overlook what I like to call the portfolio method, which is the most overlooked aspect of monetizing any type of live streaming or podcast or blog or anything else. And that is, it isn't about whether you get sponsored or how many people read it or watch it or anything like that. It's just you have now this digital footprint that when somebody hears, okay, maybe I'd like to work with Kathy. Maybe I heard somebody worked with Kathy and had a good experience. So I'll go look her up. And then I read the bio and says she's done some things and whatever. Okay, it's a nice bio like everybody else's. But now I can click on one of her videos and see she's got a great personality. She knows what she's talking about. She knows how to communicate. I see improv skills. Like, this is the real deal. And you can't fake all of that on live video in the way you can hire somebody to write a resume for you or whatever. So, hey, Sandra, good to see you. So I think, that's a part of it that doesn't fit into the digital marketing funnel and all that stuff that a lot of marketers who use live streaming talk about. But I think it's a very valid way to use your online content as kind of a living portfolio of what you've done and what you're doing and stuff like that. And it really can make people feel good about wanting to do business with you.
Yeah, that's so well said. I think sometimes we get so hung up on where it has to be literally product related or announcement related to the business. And it has to be really, really that. And one of the things, our mutual friend Roberto does, and folks who might not be familiar with him, you got to go check him out. He's wonderful. He is such a content creator. He's so prolific that he gets in a regular discipline of answering people's questions. So he thinks very purposefully about, look, he knows who he talks to. He and I have had a great conversation many times about we're both nerdy. We know who our tribe is, but we speak to people that are really super passionate about creating and super creative in the world. And we know who we create for. So he's very disciplined about answering their questions, motivating them, helping them not just with money, but with technology, with inspiration and motivation. And to your point, Ross, it's such an important one is, being purposeful, not about just a product or I have an announcement, I'm going to go live. Those are valid reasons to go live, but they can't be the only reasons. Right. One of the best early uses I ever saw of live video was probably about, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago. As this was new, out in California, in the Bay Area where I live, there is a wine bar near me. And this wine bar started doing these live sommelier wine steward vids, and they were awesome. And like the sommelier would come on there and go, hey, today we're going to talk about seasonal reds. What does that mean? And what kind, if I'm on a date and I want to impress, what kind of red goes with this? What kind of white goes with that? And just started talking about the region in Italy where the wines were from and answering questions. And it wasn't about the restaurant. It wasn't, hey, come to the restaurant. It was, let me educate you about wines from Italy. Today's tour is going to be all about Naples. Let's talk about that. And it was such a beautiful way to demonstrate such a beautiful backstory and knowledge of wines that, I don't even think the sommelier even mentioned the name of the restaurant till the end of the show. Right. And that can be such a beautiful way because now you feel like you're learning something, you're having fun, you're getting educated. And it's such a great way to build that portfolio of knowledge, to show your rockstar knowledge, And that's, I think to your point, Ross, that's a beautiful illustration, I think.
And you also, the great thing about video is you don't have to say everything, right? You have like Be Live TV, which you're using, and is a very nice platform for people who want to enhance their engagement, whether it's, showing comments on the screen or putting up lower thirds or things like that. You can put up the name of your company, as you just put up my website, which is very nice of you. Thank you. But you can put up your company. You can put up the name of your product or whatever, and you can just leave it up there and talk to people and whatever. And if they're interested, they'll go to keepingithuman.com or livestreamuniverse.com or whatever. We don't have to sit here and say it 15 times, but it's not bad to say it either, right? It all depends on the show and the conversation. If I'm doing an hour-long, like, heavy-hitting interview or whatever, it helps to break it up and say, I'm Ross Brand from livestreamuniverse.com. You're watching this. We're talking with so-and-so. Other times it's just like, here we're just two friends talking, and, we don't necessarily have to reintroduce ourselves when we know the people who are watching, and we know, I don't know. You just have to feel the conversation. Like you say, it's all about improv in a lot of different ways. But understand that, neither one of us do anything with the space behind us, right? But we could, right? There could be some logo for my company. There could be a website, a hashtag thing. There could be something that gave the information without me ever having to say it, right?
Or like me holding up my book.
There you go. But even better, right? Like, Leah, have a shelf behind you, and the book's sitting on the shelf. You never even have to mention it, right?
Right. Yes. I have my son's artwork. That's what I have behind me.
There you go.
There you go. But you're right. No, that's a beautiful, subtle way to do it. And I really love it. You're right. I see people with posters in the background, maybe a copy of the book on a stand. And it's very subtle, and it's there. But the focus is really on the conversation and adding value. With your audience. And you and I actually have talked about this topic before, and I think it's such an important one, is that, when to go live, like live versus produced. And I brought this up to Ross earlier, everybody, because there are times where, produced video is absolutely the way to go. And then there are times live makes a lot of sense. And you want both. I think you want both in your video arsenal.
Right.
Let's maybe talk a little bit about the times where live is just that much more powerful for your audience.
So let's say you're a business owner, right? And you have a new product out, and you know that some of the people who bought it early on are struggling to use it, or they had an issue, and you know how to address that issue, right? Mm-hmm. How great would it be to go live? Like, instead of sending out a press release, or instead of recording a video that they have to listen to and watch, right, which a lot of people won't do, first of all, and other people will do it but sort of resent it, right? But if you're actually like the CEO, or you're the head of the product line or whatever, and you come on and you say, hey, we understand that there's some challenges. We're going to walk you through exactly how you set up the software, or how you build the furniture, or whatever it is, right? That and if you talk through and you take questions and you stay on long enough so that people feel heard, and you let them vent a little bit, you apologize, you're human about it. That would be a perfect example of when going live means you're not hiding behind a pre-recorded video. It means you're putting yourself out there. I think of the United issue. Was it United where the guy was pulled off the plane, and it was right? Yeah. I mean, that CEO couldn't have done everything more wrong if there was like the don't do this playbook, and he did all the don't do this stuff, right? He put out press releases. He put out insensitive tweets. He gave a press conference and said, we have to remember that the people are human, like everything wrong. Now, what if, let's see, do I have a prop here? Hang on one second.
Yes, let's see if you got a prop.
Now, what if he grabbed this and he went on Facebook Live, or his website, or YouTube, or Twitter, but I would say probably Facebook Live would be a great place to do this, and say, there was an incident this morning that I know a lot of you saw. It was tremendously hurtful and unpleasant for me to watch it as well. This is not the way we've ever understood that law enforcement was going to act if a passenger gets off. Of course, we're going to review all of our policies, see what led to this, and and make changes so this never happens again. We'd like to give the gentleman who was unfortunately injured and pulled off the flight a year of flying for free on our airlines, and everybody else who was on that flight and had to experience that nerve-wracking situation will get 2 free flights on our airlines. And we're working. Any kind of violence is unacceptable. We can't have that. And it's going to require all of us to take a look at our policies and procedures and how we work to make sure this never happens again.
Yeah.
Again, I am sorry from the bottom of my heart, and we need to do better, and we're going to do better. Have a great day. Now, if he had said that, how much better would that have been than coming out scripted and then saying something dumb like, we just realized people are human, or shutting up and hiding for, a day and a half behind a couple of tweets like, oh, well, that was the police department, or, we had nothing to do with that, or, it was crowded and we needed to get our staff on. And of course, because they work for us, they're more important than a doctor or whatever. Or, maybe this guy was, didn't listen to the announcement, or it was everybody's fault but United. So there's an example of where going live again. You're saying I'm not afraid of, did you ever see Bernie Mac at Def Jam?
I've seen the video. It's pretty funny. Yeah.
And Def Jam was at the Apollo, and it's kind of a rough audience for new comics. And sometimes they'll just boo somebody. They're booing the last guy off the stage. And he came out and he opened with "I ain't scared of you bleep bleeps," right? To the audience. And then he killed it. And then he killed it with like a set that made his career, right? Yeah. And he was like in his late 20s at the time. Yeah. So that's what going live in a situation like this is saying. You're saying I'm not scared of what your reaction is. And you know what? When people are live in the room, and we saw this with Blab. Were you on Blab at all, or when Blab was dying?
I was a big Blab girl. I was a huge fan.
Right. We all love Blab, right?
Yeah.
People towards the end, people would be sitting in a room in Blab, and they'd be all bitching about Blab, right? And then somebody from Blab would come into the room, and all of a sudden 90% of them would turn around. Hey, so-and-so, good to see you. Hey, we know it's a free like all of a sudden everybody went into their defending Blab act. So just the fact that you step up and come into a room, it's a lot easier to talk bad about somebody when you're not seeing them face to face, when they're not online live. It's classic in sports. Yeah. It's classic in sports radio, where the host will rip an athlete as the worst thing to ever come across, the face of the earth. And then the guy comes on their show and it's like, hey, great to see you. Yeah. Tell us about the home run you hit 20 years ago before you sucked, So, and it's the same thing. Certain hosts do it with politicians, where it's easy to criticize when somebody's not around, but it's not that easy to ask them a tough question or really to vent at them. And, the one person who does vent, you can either diffuse it by saying, thank you, your opinion's been heard, we need to move on, or, you know what, I'm sorry that happened, or, okay, you've made your point. I think people realize that just venting to vent, like, yeah, maybe people need to do it a little bit, but at some point the rest of the crowd will be like, okay, enough. We heard it. Like, don't abuse the person.
Yeah, no, and I think your point's totally spot on. I think there's layers of escalation and layers of response. Like, one of the things that I think JetBlue did well years ago, if you remember the tarmac incident on Valentine's Day when they were stuck at the tarmac, is that the PR team said, what do you want to do? And he said, well, we don't have time to position and spin and go through the legalese. We're not going to do that. And he went right to the camera and said, this is unacceptable. And that to me was years ago, but it was leadership. And I think you're going to have to see these layers of response that you have to have the formal legal team look at certain things. I get it. Risk mitigation, blah, blah, blah. We get it. But there's a level of just owning it, to your point, of going right to the camera and being able to not just crisis communications, but recognizing that in that moment, you need to be in front of the story, not behind the story, and really own it and have that conversation with your customers. They're looking for your leadership. And it doesn't have to be in the fire either. It can also be, like, to me, United could have done a really great job following up, having a series of live conversations with the CEO, like we're doing here. Mm-hmm. We'd love to take your questions. What do you want to see us do better? How should we handle this? What else could we do on the customer bill of rights?
Right.
What would you do? And I think there could have been a lot more CEO fireside chats via live video. And I think there is a huge opportunity, it seems to me, for entrepreneurs and businesses to be at that level of executive conversation.
Right.
And it's not just, the wine bar. It's companies to be using what we're doing right now, but talking to their fan base.
Well, everybody who joins a company gets like sexual harassment training, right? Everybody who joins a company gets trained, whether they're the entry level person or the CEO, they get trained on how to use the computer system and whatever is unique to that company, right? And in an ideal world, they would also get trained on social media and how that can impact the company, both good and bad. But most companies assume that their employees don't use anything other than LinkedIn on company time. So let's keep them in the dark on that. But at some point, don't you think that those people who are visible, which in that case is always the CEO, not to mention other people who do press and publicity and social media and stuff, but anybody who could use a camera or speak in front should get training, right? Yeah. Like as video becomes, and live video in particular, but as all video becomes what we're in a few years going to think of as the internet, right? We're just going to go on the internet and watch video more than anything else, right? There's numbers. I forget the name of the company, but they did a study and they said like 85% of all domestic web traffic in the U.S. and 80% worldwide or something like that will be video in by 2019. So what if people got hired when they got hired? They were also trained on how we use mobile video and how we use live streaming and stuff like that. And so part of what a communications department, a PR department, whatever you want to call it, would do is not just script press release and coach on doing video, interviews with the news and things like that, but perhaps in conjunction with HR would train people on what are best practices for using live video. And part of that can be when there's a crisis, right? What words can we use and not use? We don't want to get ourselves in legal trouble by admitting guilt. I don't know if you say this is I'm not a lawyer, but maybe you say this is an unfortunate, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn last night. But no, you say this is an unfortunate incident, whatever you want to, like, you don't say, we're sorry that we were wrong and we caused this guy harm and we should be sued. But maybe you say this didn't turn out the way we had hoped. But even when you use that kind of language, it's better than not using any language, right? Yeah. And certainly between attorneys and HR and corporate communications, they can work out a way to train people on how to respond. I mean, there's a whole industry on crisis communication, right? So how does it change when we go live immediately as opposed to, we keep these tactics in the toolbox and we pull them out and we have a meeting and we, but no, how do we train people to respond before the crisis comes?
Well, I think it's an even bigger issue because I think it's there is no common sense department in a lot of companies, and it needs to be that. It's not just HR and it's not just the legal department. It's common sense. And I think what's going to happen, and I think you're predicting something that is starting to happen. I think you're 100% right. And I'm going to go a little further. Okay. I think we're on the cusp of not just crisis communications, but anything about, all right, we're going to have to train people in how to go live on video, invest in our best people, and not just help them with what they can and can't say, because there is the boilerplate policy around employee communications and what they can say. but train them in improv. And I'm not just saying that because of improv, but train them to how do you handle things in real time when information is constantly changing. Something just happened. You don't have time for a press release. How are you going to handle that? And I think what I see all over is customer service, for example, Ross. Customer service is just a scaled down version of crisis communication. Because when you're dealing with a crisis of one person who's pissed off, that is to that person, to that mad customer, that is crisis communications. And I think most people aren't trained in how to talk to people, how to deal with it in the moment, how to yes and the customer and say, yes, and I hear you. Let's figure out how to work through this together. And it's really giving people another level of skills of how to prepare, but also be in that moment of listening in real time and know that, you know what, there's no script for this. How do I trust my employees and yet train them to be the best in the moment that they can be? And I think we're going to see, because of video and all these other things, there has to be another layer of, I think, for lack of a better word, improv training to do this.
Yeah. And I think it doesn't only go for crisis, right? It doesn't always go for the crisis. It also, to flip it around, goes for when a company has successes. How do we show people the good things that we're doing? How do we, I'm not talking about you do some sort of phony, like, we're going to, sweep the leaves in the town park or whatever for 10 minutes and have a photo and make sure it gets in the paper. And then we'll go back to robbing our customers blind, right? No, I'm talking about like, a team just finished off developing a new product and they're celebrating, and you can show people what your work culture's like, or what the product is before it hits the store, or if you're doing something genuinely good in the community, show that. So there, instead of hoping that we celebrate our big win and maybe somebody from the local newspaper will show up and take a picture and it'll get in tomorrow, take control of it, share the moment, whether it's share, whether you only want to share a few minutes of it, whether you want to get on and narrate what's happening, have somebody talk about it, whether you want to take, you don't have to wait for somebody to come and cover your product launch or your grand opening. You can take this, put it on Facebook Live, and go around and talk to your employees and your customers and ask them what it's like. And you won't always get the perfect answer, but the idea that you are willing to put that out there, the exposure that you're going to get, the attention you're going to get is going to be amazing. And on top of it, you'll get enough positive comments that people are like, oh, wow, if I went down there, I'd get to share my thoughts on that. I'd not only get to taste the new food, but I'd get to give my review on camera. I don't have to wait for 10 weeks till the local food critic or whatever pans it, and then, too late for my giving because they're out of business, right?
Yeah.
So, and you also diffuse the importance of any one view the more you crowdsource reviews and opinions and stuff like that. I mean, now we don't go to the archives of the New York Times to look for a restaurant review. We hit Yelp because we're in the moment, and that's what we have. And so it's less important. Not saying it's less important, because if you have a big expensive restaurant and you have only limited number of seats, obviously a bad review in the Times or something could really damage you. But in general, for most restaurants that aren't competing for a Times review or something, Yelp is probably more important than a write-up in the local paper, because only people who read the paper that day are seeing it. Most people aren't searching the paper archives. Yeah, all right, maybe they do a Google search and it comes up. But most people are going to Yelp. They're going to Google reviews and things like that. And that's the benefit of having 100 people review your restaurant instead of one, even if that one is an expert. Because if look at film critics, right? The people vote that first weekend, and the critics may have hated it, but if the people go and it makes millions of dollars, all right, so the critics didn't like it, okay.
Yeah.
It might not get into the museum of film or whatever, but everybody will walk away rich and happy and get new jobs and, Yeah.
Hey, Adam Sandler doesn't need an Oscar. He's funny. Right. He's got plenty of movies that people love, and I love it. So you're saying something really important too, which is when we talk about the strategic use of live video and all these amazing things. I don't know if Mia's still on here, but Mia did something last year that I loved. She broadcast. She was sitting, I think, at a town hall meeting somewhere in Denver, in Colorado, and I remember, Mia, you were broadcasting live. You were streaming your local, Congress people talking about, and your local, municipal government talking about issues, and I went, see, that is where government could be more accountable and transparent and inclusive. That's where, people like, if you want to see a company who's doing something really great, is like Experian. Experian does these live shows, these live stream shows that are, hey, let's talk to millennials about how to be smart about your FICO score and how do you manage your credit.
Right.
And these are really value-added interactive things. And there are all these different ways to, involve people. Ask me anything, behind the scenes. Isaac Mizrahi for Target. One of my favorite things every time they do something new is they take their biggest fans behind the scenes, behind an introduction, a new launch on a fashion thing. And fashion and places like wrestling, WWE, as you know, have been like on the cutting edge of using live videos for all these amazing, cool, different things. But it's just as you're saying, being creative and strategic in all these places where you can go behind the scenes, but also inviting people to show up, to invite your army of fans to be content creators too, and enable them to reach their inner rock star, come to the grand opening, and maybe record their interaction at the wine bar. I don't know, but something fun like that.
And that's where you get into psychology. And just like I'm not a lawyer, I have no training in psychology either. But let's pretend as well, right? But the human nature is such that if you go and you voice your opinion and you give your review and you post on Yelp or you post on your blog, chances are your mindset is you want to be congruent with that. So you give a place a positive rating, you speak well about it. I think there's a good chance you're going to go there more than if you didn't. Yeah. I hadn't used Yelp up until recently as far as like ever doing a review or anything. And I'm definitely finding that I keep going back to places that I gave a positive review to. There's something about that, right? And so that's the other thing. And even where like a CEO comes on or a business owner and takes questions and you ask people questions, you ask tough questions, you complain. When they say, I'm going to address it and I'm going to do, that's important to you, we're going to change this or that, you almost feel obligated to go back and give that store or that business another shot because they were so responsive. Like if they're doing this for me, for little old me, they're going to change the way they do something or whatever. How do I not go back and like at least say that I tried it, right? I mean, so that can both filter down complaints because in the future you don't want to feel obligated to go back to something you don't really care that much about. But it also is a way of winning back. Jay Baer has the book Hug Your Haters, right? A lot of times it's just somebody who really wants to be a customer and they had an unpleasant experience or there's something they're saying, give me a hug, show me a little bit of love, right? Show me a little attention. Don't ignore me, and I'll come back and give you another shot and probably become a happy customer again.
Yeah, for sure. All good points. We want to welcome, hey, Vicky, hey, Jeffrey, hey, Peter, hey, John Boy. I know, I just dated myself with that comment, right? It's like, there's millennials out there going, what? The Waltons, everybody, you can look it up. Good to see everybody. Mia, so great to have you here. We've been talking a lot with the wonderful Ross Brand about just a bunch of different things. A, how to be a rock star. What does that mean on live stream? B, what are some great uses for going live versus produced video? And we've been kind of segueing just recently into how do we think strategically? What are some strategic uses of live video that can really add value for your business? It's not just showing, me putting on the camera and you watching me drink some wine or eat because nobody cares about that. But how do we really be strategic about live video to help people? So all good stuff. What's your favorite use? Is there somebody out there that you think, Ross, they're doing just an amazing job, like nailed it, of using live video for creative things?
I think there's a lot of people who are. Let me mention, somebody who's here right now. Professor Nez, Peter Nez, is watching. He's actually going to be my guest on Monday night. You like how I did that? It's going to be promoted. 7 p.m.
Yeah.
7 p.m. Eastern, rossbrand.live, livestreamuniverse.com. Go to the Livestream Universe Facebook page. That's where you'll see it. 7 p.m. Eastern with Peter Nez.
With Peter,
Professor Nez.
Professor Nez.
Here's what I like about how he's using it. He's using a variety of different forms of communication. He's not only using live stream, right? But he's also using short Instagram recorded videos and short videos that he puts elsewhere and short blog posts and things like that. What he's doing is he's mixing up the content and he's giving it to you in different ways. And he's also having those different forms of content complement each other. So he will do an interview show on his show, but then he'll give you some career tips or some life inspiration, or so he's got, not only has different delivered in different formats, but he's delivering different types of content and a nice mix, so it's not all the same thing. But the thing that impresses me most about Peter has been his commitment, right? He just jumped in, and I remember I was on his show, I think it was fairly early on after he started hosting interview shows, and he was like just flat out, hey, I want to do this. I want this to be, I'm committing to this. And he's done, 3, 4, 2, 7, whatever shows a week. I mean, he just gone all in. I think he's doing 2 a week now. But my point is, he made a commitment and he just loves doing it, and he's going all in, and he brings all, like, this energy and passion to it. And so he hasn't climbed to the top of the mountain, but I love seeing him race up the mountain, right? Todd Bergen's a good friend of mine. He's somebody else who I remember when he started his podcast, and he's another person, like, he made a commitment to do high quality, to get, really good quality audio and video, and really researches his interviews and stuff like that. Vicky, who's here, does 2 professional shows, right? A week. And I mean, you look at the way she connects with her guests and the fact that she talks about her business, and she's such a good salesperson that it never really feels like she's being salesy. She has a little speech that she always gives to let you know who she is and what she does. But mostly it's enjoying the way she relates to people and the way she brings her guests out. And she does really long form interviews. I think I was on her show for about an hour and a half, but I mean, it was just such an amazing experience. And I mean, I could go on. I mean, everybody who we're talking to and talking about here is great. I mean, Mia is amazing. It's showing you while she travels and showing you products as the brand and ambassador par excellence. Or, like, she's showing you snips of her life, and whether she does it live or she does it in something that could be considered live streaming, right? Which is like a Snapchat video, a Facebook, a Messenger video, those little Instagram video, the videos that you do that aren't live, but they're recorded in the moment and they're not edited, right? Yeah. And in 2-minute snips, Mia can show you your whole day, and you see the trip she's on, where she's staying, what car she's driving, some of the other perks and benefits of being a travel blogger and brand ambassador. So it's all part of putting together sort of her personal brand and her story. And so there's so many different ways. What I'm saying is there's no one way, right? There's no one right way to use it. It depends on what your business is. It's got to fit your personality and what you like to do. And you've got to test the market, right? Do people connect to it? If they don't connect to it, then perhaps a different style of live streaming, or perhaps maybe recorded content, or perhaps blogging or something else. I mean, I don't think everybody needs to live stream. I don't think it's, it's not the cure for cancer. It's not gonna bring world peace.
Right.
But for some people's brands and some people's businesses, maybe a lot of people's, if they were confident about using it and understood the benefits of it, could use it as another tool in their business tool case, right? And that's it. It's not better than podcasts. It's not better than recorded video. It's not better than having a website or a blog or a Twitter account or a Facebook page. It's another tool. Now, I do believe there's ways that can help you sort of leapfrog over some of those other tools, which take an awful long time to get in front of people. But why don't we save that for another show?
Well, amen. No, I feel like it's like live streaming church, because I'm all amen, brother, preach it. I love it. No, it's so true. And I love what Vicky said. Yeah. Next is on our world tour. We are going to solve world peace. I promise you, Vicky and Ross and Mia and Peter and everybody wonderful here. Nazim, we are going to do that. I think that's next. Well, I love the way you said that. And that's such an important encapsulation for people who are kind of maybe coming in late.
I didn't even realize Nazim was still on. I mean, come on, talk about taking us to Italy. I
know, right? Well, and that's the beauty of that's the power of a community, just demonstrated live right here. Right. Is that I love that you said this, and it was funny. You must have read my mind. I was thinking as you were talking, not everybody does need live stream. However, if you're going to use it with intent, use it purposefully, know why you're using it. Even as somebody who, for me, is an improviser, I'm also a storyteller, so I'm very purposeful about how I use it. And if I'm going to use it, I want to have a co-created improvisational experience, but that doesn't mean that I don't know from the very get-go strategically, what is my goal? How do I want to start the conversation with Ross? What are we generally going to use as a springboard to launch the conversation, and then interact and let go a little bit so that the conversation is really co-created from the wants and needs of the community that shows up.
I was impressed by how much you prepare. Like how I mean, I was almost like, this is cheating. Stop giving me the questions ahead of time. And of course our conversation didn't take the route that, we planned. You just went with it, and that's your improv skill. But the fact that you had an idea of some of the things you wanted to cover and made sure that there were topics that I wanted to discuss and things like that, you can still be unscripted and you can improvise, but you're also professional, right? And that's the two sides of it, right? And it's particularly if you're doing it to build your brand or your business. You have to know where it fits into the big picture. That doesn't necessarily mean writing out every word you're going to say. You can use your improv skills, and a lot of people develop to where they're better without a script, or they're better without being over-prepared. But that doesn't mean that I think, you were saying this, or at least this is what I'm reading into what you're saying. It fits into your larger strategy, right? It's got a place in, it's got a purpose. That purpose can be to advance your brand, to advance your business. It could be to have a good time. It could be you think you're going to be a star like Peter Nez and have, corporations just sponsor you to do nothing but talk and then mention their product. Whatever it is you're going to do and you're going to go with this thing, it has to have a larger purpose. Otherwise, and though, there's nothing wrong with just getting on like Blab style and just chatting with people in a room and having fun too. But then that's a purpose in its own way, right?
It really is. It absolutely is. As long as I've always believed that if you're mindful about what is it you want to get from it? What is it you want the audience to get out of it? And I know Vicky, and we've got Peter, we've got all these amazing, Mia and Jeffrey, all these amazing, smart live streamers here, and you probably do your own version of this, but it's how does it fit into my larger world, but how is it going to benefit the audience? And then how am I, in the course of doing those things for me, staying true as best as I can to my brand, because as Ross found out, I do prepare, but only slightly, in the sense that I know at each micro level of the show, at the very outset of the show, what's my intent for the show? And I always think, how am I going to get my audiences back? An improviser, before we go on stage, we say, how do I have the back of the audience and the other people I'm performing with? Because it's about them. And if I can be purposeful in making sure that the audience is getting what they need from that conversation, and I am focusing on my partner, i.e. Ross, and making him look good and bringing out all his wonderful wisdom, because he's like a tweet a second over here. He's a gold mine. He's just, how do if we can do all these things and be improvisational and not force a plan, just a high level intent, then I think there's power in that letting go and in that dynamic. And that is a balance. I think you and I have both, because we come from broadcasting and performing, there's a balance there that has to be struck. Mm-hmm. It can be struck, but it means that you are both purposeful, but also improvisational and learning how to balance the letting go. And I think that's where I think that next level of live video can and should go. It has to let go. It has to drop the wall. I call it breaking the fourth wall. We've got to break that fourth wall in I think, live video.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think even TV journalists and news anchors and stuff like that, the Sunday talk shows and whatever, they have to ask the tough questions, right? But it doesn't mean that they have to come into the interview an antagonist before they've, you can still be polite. You can still be professional. You can say hello. You can thank the person for coming on. You ask the tough questions. You push them to answer the tough questions. But in most cases, the person may be wrong, but they're not evil, right? I mean, There's a way that, yes, your job is to get the most that you can out of that person for the audience. Yeah. But certainly being belligerent and treating that person like they're, the worst person in the world doesn't usually gain you that much. No. If anything, it's the softer approach and letting them talk and listening to what they say and then asking a question rather than your scripted talking points that will often lead to a more revealing interview.
No, so true. And it's so funny. You mentioned just earlier, you said those of us who maybe have been doing this unscripted for so long, our mutual friend, J.S. Gilbert, who's the master of just video, but also sarcasm, and he makes me laugh, and he's just so great. He and I were chatting the other day, and for some of us who've been doing improvisational sort of storytelling and live for so long and going unscripted, it's funny because when I do scripted now, it feels so foreign to me. It feels so weird, but I think it's because that muscle for being in the moment and really weaving a story with everybody's contributions has become such a part of my muscle tissue.
Well, could you imagine doing a show now without a chat, without a live audience there to give you feedback? No. I mean, most podcasts, although they're pre-recorded and maybe a little editing is done, they're pretty much recorded live, right? If they're an interview, I mean, it's kind of live, even if nobody's there. It's a conversation, and it goes on for 20 minutes to 40 minutes to an hour. But it's basically a live conversation. But there's no chat going on there. And it's like, it's weird sometimes. It's like, where do I look to see what's going on, what people are thinking, who's here, what question they'll throw in that,
Yes. No, it's so true. I love your belligerence is out, Vicki. Yes. Oh my God, too funny. It's generally not a good idea. It's generally not a good idea. Yeah, no, we'll get to Peter. That's a really good question.
Look, I mean, there's a place for cutting off somebody who just keeps going back to the same talking points and won't answer a question. I mean, that's, the person being interviewed, it's not their goal necessarily to have to answer every question or every tough question, but can't be can't be a shouting match before you've even said hello, right?
No, but it's funny, and this is where, like, if you're going to do live video, you do have to have some dancing skills, because there was a time, and Ross knows, because of his broadcasting background, there was a time I was trying to have a chat with somebody, and all I was getting was like yes, no, like very binary answers, and this person was such a painful introvert, like a wonderful, beautiful author, but like it was trying to extract. It was like, oh, doing my dancing skills. it was tricky, but it also reminds me though of how it has become an art form.
That's what the bitch slap is for.
Yes, it's become an art form, and that's where you have to be prepared for all these different things. You have your plan, but you've got to be willing to sort of deviate and let go and dance and give backstories, and it's almost like a variety show. It's like but yeah, back in the day when you didn't even have the audience participation, Russ, I tried live video and I hated it, because I think for people like you and I who very much thrive on that interactivity, and we need that to come alive, that's what it's for. I felt so weird. It's like asking me not to talk by using my hands. Like if you say, Kathy, stop using your hands, like I don't know that I can form a cogent sentence. Right. And I felt the same way with live video, where I didn't have interactivity, which is probably why when Blab came out, and you and I were early adopters of Blab, I loved it so darn much. I just loved it.
Is it wrong if I still say it was the greatest social network ever created?
I told Sean Puri that if
not in terms of quality of the tools and stuff, but in terms of how it fostered community. And I think a lot of credit goes to the community that gathered around it too. But
totally. I told Sean the same thing. I agree. I think Blab sort of, regardless of how it ended, I think Blab opened up a whole community of live streamers and made this kind of stuff possible. I think it started that.
They got the
process.
hard part right.
Yeah.
I think they lucked into it. I mean, I don't think it was by design. I think they were shocked that, well, anyway, we could do a whole show on why the people at Blab suck.
Well, we can do that's a show for another time. But yeah, I think you're right, and I think to your point, no, you're right on there, Ross. Right. You're right, and Vicky says it rocked the relationships, and I think you're exactly right, Vicky. I think I think Be Live and all these other tools are the descendants of what Blab enabled. Right. And so I think Blab was sort of the godfather of all that stuff. I want to go back to Peter's question, and I don't want to cut you off, but I don't want to forget. You asked a question, Peter, about the time, how long these live streams should be. I mean, do you have any sense of what that should be, Ross?
Well, I remember Peter said in the question something about his broadcast range between 30 minutes and an hour, and whether he thought that was too long or too short, or whether he thinks that they go on too long. All right, let me give the goofy kind of like consultant answer, right? Like it depends, right? It goes as, if you have only 5 minutes of material and you do a 20-minute show, it's not going to be too good, right? But I think you want to get off before you've run out of steam, right? So it's always better to leave people wanting more than it is to just let the show's momentum completely crash and burn, and then you're like, right. I mean, you always leave them with a really good joke or something to where they're rousing applause, and you walk off. You don't stay there and go, I think I've run out of material. All right, thanks guys. I'll be back next week. So yeah. I mean, I think it depends on the kind of show. It depends on what your purpose is. There are people who do 3 hours on YouTube, and they're getting donations, and they're covering certain topics in depth and getting questions and have a live chat and all that. And hey, that in a way, that's their business model, right? And so why get off while people are giving you money, right? Yeah. But for an interview show, you kind of want to be on at least 20 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes is the sweet spot for audience, right? And then